All right, so for my cognitive bias that I chose, I found additive bias, and this is the tendency to solve problems through addition, even when subtraction is the better approach. And this one stuck out to me because I've heard some things sort of related to this, but I think opposite. I think if I'm getting this quote right, it's from a podcast that I listen to. The host sometimes says, in terms of diet, like he says it's addition by subtraction. So taking certain things out in order to make your life better, I think is the main concept that he's getting at. But this bias is the way that I see it, maybe some examples related to education. I think it potentially becomes a problem when people start to feel overwhelmed, particularly teachers feel overwhelmed because it feels like stuff just keeps getting piled on and piled on and piled on. I even heard it today in our conference science teacher meeting, where someone was talking about a separate grade book that they have for essential life skills, and he said it's just another thing to throw onto our plate. Yeah, it's good, but it's another thing that we have to manage. So I think people feel this one a lot. Some other examples for where additive bias maybe isn't where we can kind of see the effects of it. So think about learning how to ride a bike. Traditionally, we would just throw training wheels. We would add training wheels onto a kid's bike for them to learn how to ride a bike and get that whole process down. But lately, or in recent years, they developed the balance bike, which they just subtracted the pedals instead of adding the training wheels. And it achieves the same goal with a simpler design and using subtraction rather than addition. Another one that came up is typically people think of, buying more stuff rather than decluttering or throwing things away. Or the study that I found that relates to this, which I'll put a link to, they did multiple things, but one of the parts of the study was they had people look at a Lego tower, and they said you need to make this tower stable enough to hold a real brick so that it doesn't crush the Lego guy under the tower. And they basically just had a pretty strong tower, but on one corner there was a Lego that was sticking up, and then the platform on that one Lego. So typically people would think to add 3 more Legos on the other corners to stabilize it, instead of taking that one off so that it could just sit on the next flat level surface. Pretty interesting stuff. But in a lot of situations, our brains just automatically go to adding things rather than taking things away. So I think getting back to how that could affect education, and teachers feeling like we just keep getting stuff piled on, maybe sometimes we need to take a step back and try and simplify our approaches rather than adding new techniques, adding more vocab, adding more, adding all these different strategies and tools. Sometimes maybe we need to boil it down to what is simple and what works. So for part C of the post, I've recognized in my research in this class that educational research tends to promote, new ways of teaching pretty frequently. And so teachers are asked to implement those new hot practices, kind of the flavor of the week feeling. And so I feel like that applies to this additive bias. I don't know that it necessarily would affect educational research specifically within a study, but it kind of affects educational research as a whole because, again, we're always looking for the next thing or the new thing to add to what we're doing to make what we're doing better. So those are kind of my thoughts there. I think that's a lot of studies are typically testing the impact of an added method rather than testing the impact of taking something away. And I might be wrong there. There might be some stuff out there, but I didn't really see any of that. For part D, I think maybe the additive bias could be sort of related to the sunk cost fallacy in that we don't want to restart and lose all our progress. So we just keep adding these little things. We we have a problem here. All right, let's try this new approach, or let's add this task, or let's keep track of that. Let's document that, or whatever it ends up being. We typically add responsibilities or habits or resources or rules to some situation. It's this additive mindset. And I think sometimes it feels like we're stuck in our educational system, that we can't do like a full reset and just like restart and take things out. We're always just adding stuff. So hopefully that all makes sense. Hopefully, I don't know. I think that it's a common thing that people feel, and maybe it could be related to other biases too, but trying to solve problems through addition, even when subtraction is the better approach. I'm going to try and implement that thought and try and subtract some more things, I think.